the way international banking worked those days, think about the currencies back in those days. The currency that was more common in Italy and around Italy was the Venetian ducat. Ottomans had their own currency, British had their own currency. They're all different gold coins. There is transaction costs around them. Suppose you want to do business in England. How are you going to do? You're an Italian firm. One thing you can think of is get your Venetian gold pieces, transport them to England, convert them to British gold sterlings or whatever they were called, and do business there. That's pretty costly, not just the cost of transporting. The Mediterranean in 14th and 15th century was full of pirates. Both Spaniards and Ottoman pirates. And suppose one of them, and a lot of the 15th century Venetians and Ottomans were at war. So as soon as they see a ship with a Venetian flag, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to attack, get all the gold. Insurance wasn't that common those days. So it's costly. So the way it works, the Medici Bank has a subsidiary in London, okay? It's typically what we call now representative office. You give the merchant a note that says, okay, this guy has money with us, so when they come to you, you should be able to give them this much in British pounds. That's it. That's international banking actually makes international trades a lot easier. Obviously, if you have international offices, branches, or subsidiaries, it allows chances for growth. Think about it. If you can have a subsidiary in China or India, these are places where growth are going to happen. If not for anything, big population growth, and B, even though China, for example, is the second largest economy, their per capita income is very low. China per capita GDP. 12,670. They have a GDP about $18 trillion. Let's say USA, which is about 5 times that, and US GDP, let me see. $25.5 trillion. So China is about 80% of US in terms of total GDP, but per capita is 5 times less. As the country gets richer, not all of it, but some of that extra wealth is going to go to their middle class. And those guys are going to start spending on more value-added stuff. So you want to have an operation in place. Let's look at India. They're $3.5 trillion. And their per capita GDP is only 2,300. That's 1/6 of China's per capita. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that there's going to be growth in banking business in India. Okay? There is a lot of poverty in India, but as the country gets richer, some of the poverty is going to be alleviated. for example, in 2000. In 2000, their per capita GDP was $400. It's $2,300 now. Let's look at China. It was less than 1,000 in 2000. Let's look at US. US didn't even double in those 20 years or 22 years. But China went up by 6 times, and similarly India went up by 6 times. So these guys are going to catch up. I mean, I don't see India coming to, in today's dollars, 65,000 over the next 50 years, but they probably will get to 30. Okay, you know, from 4,000 to 30, that's big growth. So you got to have operations in those places. If you don't, you're not going to benefit from that. There's, of course, always a risk reduction. Even though the economies of the world are a lot more interconnected these days compared to 20, 30 years ago, there is still some diversification effects. I mean, just because US is going down doesn't necessarily mean India and China is going to go down. They may go down, but probably not go down as much. Now, types of international banking offices. I'm going to talk about some of them. You can read the rest in the book. The simplest of the international banking relationship is a correspondent bank relationship. You have no operation in the foreign country, but you pick a bank in that foreign country that is your correspondent bank, and you have accounts with each other. Let's say I'm a Turkish bank. One of the larger Turkish banks is the Guarantee Bank, which is actually also kind of a subsidiary of an Italian bank, but and I am JP Morgan, and I want to do banking business in Turkey, but I don't want to do any branches or anything like that. So I go to them, okay, why don't you become my correspondent bank? So I open an account for JP Morgan in there, and they open an account with me, and we do all of our clients' international businesses through that. I'm a Turkish exporter, and I sell goods to an American firm, and I want to be paid in dollars. And I go to my bank, which is a Guarantee Bank, and say, okay, I'm expecting this much payment. And they send an instruction to their correspondent bank. They say, please get that money from that client. And that client is an American firm. They're going to wire the money to JP Morgan. But with the instruction that says, make sure this money goes to Guarantee Bank's account, and also let Guarantee Bank know that it should go to the client's account. That's it, done. It's that simple. Obviously, when the roles are reversed, they do the same thing. It's low-cost thing, and it's pretty much useful only for transactions. Basically, you let your clients do international business without actually having an account in those countries. The Turkish firm doesn't have to have any account in US. All they need is account in Guarantee Bank, and the correspondent banking relationship takes care of the rest. If you want to do a little bit more than that, you kind of open a representative office. Okay. You still would have a correspondent banking relationship, but it's kind of, you can think of that as local customer support, not just, at phone level. and especially for multinational clients, they can come conduct meetings. It's kind of a service role. If you want to do a little bit more than that, you actually open a branch in that country. Okay. It does operate like a local bank. So if Citibank opens a branch in Turkey, for Turkish law purposes, it operates like a Turkish bank. But legally, it's part of the parent bank, which means it is subject to regulations of both. You can do it for a lot of reasons. You can provide, fuller services. You can basically tell your multinational corporations, if you develop income in that country and you don't want to repatriate it, and you can basically use our foreign branch and keep the money there. Do you guys know what's the difference between repatriating the money or not? Let's say I'm an American firm. For example, Cargill has a big operation in Turkey. Do you guys know what kind of business Cargill does? It's basically all sorts of agricultural stuff. Okay, they buy and sell, wheat, cotton, olive oil, what have you. And having worked in Turkey, and Cargill was one of our clients, they have a big operation in Turkey. And they do generate profits from that. They can keep that profit they can leave that profit in Turkey, or they could transfer it to their accounts in America. What's the difference between the two? Do you know? It's for tax purposes. It could make a difference. If you leave it in Turkey, it's taxed according to Turkish tax rates. If you bring it here, it has to be taxed at the US tax rates. And sometimes there is double taxation going on. If two countries have no double taxation treaty, it's typically not a good idea to bring the money here. You leave the profits there. In some cases, you do it for tax arbitrage purposes. The accounting firms have a euphemism for that. It's called transfer pricing.